Okay, on the U.S. China relationship, the last few weeks have been marked by optimism that ties may be able to improve. That follows last month's gathering in California. President Biden and China's President Xi Jinping. It was their first face-to-face meeting in a year. Joining us now to talk about outstanding business issues for the U.S. and China in the year ahead, we have Empath co-founder and CEO Carlos Gutierrez. He served as Commerce Secretary in the George W. Bush administration, formerly served as CEO of Kellogg's. Carlos, I'm so glad you're here this morning. I know there's a lot of specific things to talk about, but I want to go back to when I used to interview you when you were Commerce Secretary, and we talked about a relationship with China that was constructive on the one hand, and it was confrontational, but less so on the other hand, with the overall idea that the two biggest economies in the world should get along and it would be a better place on earth when they got along. Carlos, I have a question for you. How did it go so wrong? How do we get back to that time?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Steve, and I appreciate your remembering that. I think today, and you mentioned at the beginning, the relationship between China and the U.S. is better today than it has been over the last several years. And then, of course, we got into the trade war, the tariffs, the rhetoric, the insults. It was just China was the last thing you wanted to support. So we're coming out of that. And it's not as if though, we're back to where we used to be, but we now have military to military exchanges and dialogue. That's huge. And think about the fact that we didn't have those at a time when we were, throwing insults across the Taiwan Strait and almost looked like we were going to war, but no dialogue across the two militaries. We now have commercial dialogues happening. So there is a new foundation, and it's going to be tricky. It's not as if though everything has been solved, but there is a foundation from which to build.
Which are the areas do you think might show the most progress here? The U.S. looks like it's gone further when it comes to chip restrictions, and that has obviously rankled the Chinese in a way that they date the time when we put those chip restrictions in place as the beginning of an era for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's technology obviously is a big issue, and the Chinese will come out soon with their data localization regulations and laws, and that's going to be an impact. And I would expect that side of the relationship to not give in the short term. There is a sense that it is a national security issue and that we need to keep it to ourselves. We can't, we just can't let it go into the open market, into the free market. I think eventually that will turn into a series of negotiations, a series of guidelines, a series of rules of engagement. But today, I don't see that moving. I think that is the core of the friction from a commercial point of view is chips and technology.
I'm curious, when you look at China's approach to business, last week it caused Tencent, for instance, the game maker, to lose some $43 billion in market cap when it had these widespread curbs on video gaming. And then it came out yesterday and said, okay, well, we're going to approve 105 new online games. In response to these major losses, how much does the economic pressure force China to pivot? How much are we seeing, for instance, we're seeing foreign investment pausing because investors don't know whether it's a smart move right now to put their money in a place where the government can come in and arbitrarily make rules that cause $43 billion in losses.
Yeah, I think that is the question in terms of priorities for China. President Xi Jinping has focused on political reforms, domestic political reforms, regaining control of society by the government, by the Communist Party. And this is part of it, by the way. The video game industry, before it used to be cinema, now it's video games. So I would look at this as part of that domestic control. However, there's no question that China has realized that it's time to pivot toward the economy. And as you say, foreign direct investment is down. Their property market is in trouble. local debt. There are a lot of issues, inflation or lack of inflation, a lot of issues in China, and they're pivoting to that without giving up the controls that they gained during Xi Jinping's first 2 terms. So that I believe is the positive part, and that goes back to President Xi's meeting in San Francisco with CEOs. There is a sense that they're trying to lure back investors. Now, having said that, I think 2024 is a year of sort of let's wait and see. I don't see a lot of increased U.S. investment. About 50% of the companies say they're going to increase some. Some say they're going to hold or decrease. It's going to be kind of a standstill year while we both gauge each other and see whether these changes are real.